Hello, everyone. This is Mia Saenz with Love Mastery. And it's been an interesting several weeks. For many people, it's been an interesting lifetime because the last several weeks in social media, people have been talking about the Me Too, which is about the trauma, the sexual trauma, whether it affects us all differently and it affects us all the same. The levels of trauma for different people are different than others. The point about trauma is no one's trauma is greater than another. Each person's um, ability to get past their trauma is extremely important. Each person's life is important. Each person is so important and valuable that moving into this state of, as most people know, the energy of love changes our story, or love changes the energy of our story, which is the main things that I talk about. So that's really trauma healing. So what that does is we change the energy around the trauma. We don't change the stories because that would be lying. We change the energy so that it doesn't affect us. When we remove that energy, what we're doing is we're removing even the perpetrator out of our DNA cellular system that has been placed there. It could be mine started when I was 6. So we are talking nearly about 48 years ago. So that's a long time. Like I said, mine is no different than anyone else simply because mine was severe, but simply because it gets in our body, it settles in our body, it gets in our mind, it stays in our subconscious, it devalues us, it makes us feel like we're still a victim. So how do we get past that? It's interesting because as I was writing up the notes for this talk, I realized that what I had been doing my life was exactly what is required to move past this. So this isn't anything new. Psychologists use this, all sorts of people. And as I have a minister's license to support the spiritual love work that I do because at the time I just simply didn't want to go back to school to get my doctorate in psychology, even though I've studied a lot of it over the years. And so when you can implement spiritual love and psychology together, what you're doing is, well, one, that's a spiritual psychologist, but two, what you're doing is you're learning how to change the lives of not just yourself, but others around you. So everything that we do really does need to have that spiritual element to it because we are spiritual beings in this beautiful human body. And yes, your body is so beautiful. So we're going to talk about several different things. But first, about healing processes. But I want to talk to you about that really, once again, I want to remind you that trauma is moving from that place and that memory of where it happened back into a place of self-acceptance, self-love, and moving past and through that trauma and that experience. Not everyone has the same easy time at moving through things that others do, or somebody that you know. I have worked with thousands of women, primarily women, on sexual abuse, on trauma, on self-love, on feeling devalued, on feeling not important. And what I've noticed is almost everyone, there's just been like maybe 2 people out of thousands, so that's a very, very small percentage that can't feel they can get past it. So what does that look like? That looks like their subconscious is holding on tight. And right before I get into the rest of this, I want to explain to you so that maybe you're not aware of what our consciousness and our subconsciousness looks like. So our consciousness is that evolving space of new and greater experiences, information, knowledge. We call it the oneness. It's that relationship connection to the God energy, to God. I refer to God as God. You may call it creator, source, whatever. It's the same for me. So I will try to utilize all the languages, but just understand that you can replace any words that I say with what feels right for you. Normally, I also tell people, listen to everything except nothing. But in this case, listen to everything and see how you can integrate it all into your being of who you are, to move it out and move it forward, because it does not have to stay with you. That's the bottom line. Trauma, um, sexual abuse, any of it, because there's other traumas too that are not sexually activated. 9/11 was one of them. And normally people who have had that kind of trauma, their PTSD flares up, or they see that trauma, their PTSD flares up from other areas. So trauma is pretty tricky. It's like an underground root system. So if you imagine a big, dense, ancient forest, it could be in England, it could be anywhere that you think is really glorious. And imagine the root systems. A tree is born, it grows, and then it flowers and it seeds and it gets blown down and it falls and it gets spread across the floors of the forest, or the forest to be. Some more regrow, they continue the same process. So as you see the roots of the forest, they all are interwoven and connected. There's even some trees in forests, and trees period, that grow where their root system comes up and grows another tree and then goes off and grows another tree. So when you think about trauma, it's in that same alignment of the underground root system that is just fanning out, trying to find a reprieve. So the reprieve is wanting to be healed. Until it is healed, it's just moving through your body, moving through your subconscious, moving through your psyche, which is your body, mind, and spirit, until it's healed. Now, the difference between the subconscious is an ironclad, well, okay, one more thing about consciousness that I love, and many of you have already heard it, is once we understand something and allow that acceptance in, say, I want this, you're already changing the pattern of who you are and where you're coming from. So consciousness I describe as this beautiful balloon, beautiful purple balloon, because that's just my favorite color in balloons. And so say I go to the party store and I'm like, wow, I really want a really gorgeous, deep purple jewel-like balloon. So I'm seeing all these, at least here in Los Angeles, say at Party City, there's so many different variations of purple, and each color is in its own clear plastic round bubble jar. So there's hundreds of colors of balloons I could choose from, but I finally find the deepest, beautiful purple that I want. I take it and I have it blown up with helium. It's really big and beautiful. I'm smiling, really happy. I love my balloon. I take it home. And then all of a sudden, for some reason, who knows, I say, hey, I want to see what that balloon looks like without the helium in it. So when the balloon is released with the helium, what's left? That balloon will never be flat again and folded over, or even just flat how it was in the beautiful plastic jar at Party City. It has expansion, it has ripples, it has stretch marks. So that's what consciousness is. You can never forget what you learn. So I think one of the most important tools here is you never forget the knowledge and the growth that you learn. You can always change any of the other information that's holding on. You can turn it around and heal it. Now we're going to get into the subconscious. The subconscious is that level that takes everything in. So I call it an ironclad door or a prison, because literally things go in like a roach motel or something like that. Things go in and they can't get out, and then they just go round and round and round and round. So the subconscious has to catch up with the conscious in order for it to make sense. So this is why practicing, working on something, demonstrating it, manifesting it, creating it, removing it, and moving forward is so important, because we're retraining our subconscious to, different aspects into a conscious state. So literally that means that when an idea or the thought of the extreme depressed state from trauma comes up, you work on removing it, because just like anything, you work on removing it because you don't want that space to just be there rattling around and around and around and making you feel terrible. So as we grow, This is why I say to people, we have to allow integration in to our system from what we've learned before we can work on more. So for a quick example, the inner child meditation process, we do that weekly and not sooner because our subconscious is bringing up more information as it integrates in, and we can then heal it in the next process. We can then address it as we say, wow, I remember now that it wasn't this way. I was also touched or hurt this way, and this way. Great, now we get to heal that. That's the exciting part. So it's literally about understanding how your system works, which I just explained, your conscious and subconscious, and removing all the cellular DNA garbage that happened to you. Some people, when they've had trauma when they're older or when they're young, physical trauma, sexual trauma, even emotional and verbal trauma, you want to run and scrub yourself clean. Well, okay, so you do that, but literally that's not going to scrub and clean your interior cellular that builds up. So an incident happens, it settles into your body, you keep moving on in life and growing, whether you're from a young child growing older and rehearsing that story. So the story is getting crazier and crazier. Not that it's changing in the elements of the truth, but the emotional despair is making you feel, could be disgusting, could be unlovable, could be devalued, could be worthless, could be unloved. All these negative things that you are not as an infinite spiritual being is coming in. So we want to remove this on a cellular level. So this type of work of processes and meditational processes and doing your work is not for, say, Mia, who's teaching this. I've done the work. It's for you to grow past. And as you see and talk to other people in groups, like if you ever want to, anyone listening to this recording, if you want to get into some of our self-love groups to even just have conversations, then ask and we'll show you the links to join secret groups on Facebook and things like that so that you can deal through your stuff. And I'm talking about now or in the future. So getting it out of our cellular DNA is literally about changing the energy of our story. When we remove that and accept that it's being healed, accept that it's leaving our body, our system, and everything else, we can move forward. Now, I want to share with you a few things about trauma, and this is current trauma, but I want to share the current trauma, how to handle it in order then to move into a pre-existing case. Because there are many people, myself included, that although I had trauma as a child, I also had it as an adult. Like when I was dating, I was raped. I had another experience with some other bad thing with another person. So I'm sharing this with you so that you understand that at any age, you can move past things and you can heal it. But first, we have to deal with, if you're dealing with an immediate situation, let's get the immediate situation taken care of, and then the deep-rooted layering stuff can be healed. So be able to recognize, so now we're going to talk about the immediate stuff, and this also goes with trauma that's been laid inside of you, like I was saying, on a cellular DNA level, on a memory level. So there's some things that are for both current and past, and then there's some things that are for current. So I'm going to share this. So this is for both new and old trauma. Be able to recognize and learn to understand that your symptoms are normal reactions to sexual trauma and emotional trauma. You may feel like you are out of control or going crazy, but in reality, you're experiencing what we are called post-traumatic stress syndrome, or symptoms. So that is a huge part, PTSD. And here's another one. Talk about your thoughts, feelings, actions to people that you trust, to literally people that you trust. Share with them what happened. Then talking about it some more and keep on going until it's out of your system. And we're going to go into some ways in which to work that a little bit down. This is where here's some of it, but we're going to talk about more. This is where you would want to do journaling besides talking to people, and talk to people that you trust. You don't want people to say, oh my God, that's the worst thing ever. Don't talk to me about it, because you're going to close down again. So talk to someone. It's often good to go with a therapist on a spiritual level, or a spiritual person on a therapeutic level that does counseling. So I always find that the spiritual level with any type of therapy is the most profound. That's how I literally changed and healed my life, was through the spiritual tones. Because if you believe in any form of the divine God, creator, source, however you want to call it, you are in the spiritual zone. So that makes sense to you. And just hashing it out over and over in a therapy room without a spiritual tone, and there are therapists who have a spiritual tone. So I'm not trying to promote you to go somewhere else than here, but I'm sharing with you that you have options, and that's the beauty of this. So with this, when you're talking it out, make sure that you do your journaling. Write your feelings out. Your feelings are valuable. If somebody tells you, get over it, this was a long time ago, don't be stupid, things like that, turn around, walk away. No, you can't talk to them about this. And if they're not close to you, remove them from your experience, because they have no place being there if they can't support you. You want to be able to journal what you're feeling. You want to accept what you're feeling as your truth. It may not feel good and it may not move you forward, but this is what is happening to you. So your feelings and your reactions to this event of what happened with you, and you want to be able to journal this. And you also would want to go into self-forgiveness letter writing. So we'll talk about that in a moment. Then you proceed into the inner child healing work, because whenever we're dealing with any child, especially from a younger age, we want to go in and heal it with love. We want to go in there and experience what it's like to give that little being of us, that little child, male or female, depending on who's listening to this and which gender you are. You want to go in and you want to heal that with love, because nobody can love us the way we can love ourselves. And when we go in and show ourselves, or our little self, in a meditative process, how gloriously and amazing they are, love prevails, and healing absolutely takes place really at a very fast pace. So when you do heal your inner child in love, you have that ability to remove and eliminate the energy around that story. That story is so painful. We have to get rid of that energy. And behind that trauma, it keeps us stopped. So literally be gentle with yourself, be kind, be loving, because nobody will give you as much love as what you can give yourself and what you need. And this goes for every single human being on this planet. We have directly into ourself can literally heal. Someone's love and guidance is very healing too, and extremely powerful. But we need to do the work. We need to do the practice. We need to step in and take responsibility for us. So when I talked about the forgiveness letter writing, that literally is writing you a letter around that experience. Be kind, be loving, don't yell at yourself. If you are writing your most favorite person in the world, generally, it is your bestest friend, your child. Treat yourself with that same love and respect. So as you're writing, Dear Mia, you wouldn't put Mia if you're writing yourself, but let's say, Dear Mia, I'm sorry that you were in this situation. And then talk about it. Analyze each aspect of what happened and replace it with the love part, because that's where the healing, the forgiveness takes place. You may even then want to take it a step further, depending on what level you're at in your healing. And you might want to go to the space of writing that perpetrator, person, whatever, a forgiveness letter too. It obviously doesn't have to be, I forgive you and accept that you did this to me. But whatever you've learned or are learning, Put that in your letter. Get your power back. Step out of victimhood. There is no victimhood. If we allow ourselves to be empowered, we cannot be in the other place. You choose one or the other. You choose whether you want to be strong and gracious and empowered, or you choose whether you want to lie on the floor and cry. I'm not making fun of anybody. I've been there myself. I see it all the time with clients. I've seen it with male and female clients. So my point is we all have our own thresholds, so be gentle. Gentleness, surrender, and acceptance are really two of the most important aspects of bringing healing about. Because if we're being negative and rude and and yelling at ourselves, how are we supposed to let the love in? How are we supposed to let the forgiveness in, the acceptance, the beauty, the grace, the self-connection, your own divinity? So I will always tell you, first and foremost, be gentle with you. Now, this is not the same thing as if you're trying to work out at the gym to get your body fit and you say, oh, Mia says be gentle with myself, so I'm not going to do this. If your body can fully function and you're progressing forward, it's a different thing. Of course, be gentle with yourself if you have an injury, if you're exhausted. I'm showing you the elements between regular life information and healing what's called trauma, okay? So here's something that is for immediate need, not for the trauma that's lasted a long time. So someone listening may have had a fairly recent, under a couple years of trauma. And so besides what we've talked about, do whatever it takes to create a safe feeling for you, a place of safety and tranquility, and in your immediate environment. So that means if you have to go in and lock your doors, go in and lock your doors. If you need to put your head under the covers for a teeny bit, do that too. Make yourself feel safe and peaceful. Do you need to think about these? Do you need to sleep? Perhaps with the night light on for a while. You can develop a discipline of meditation or listening to smooth music at night or during the day. Do what feels good for you. Don't be watching the news or a vicious or even a detective show if you can't handle what's coming on. Be aware of what you're listening to, what you're thinking, just like you do with your food. Be aware of your eyesight, your smell, your hearing, your touch, your mouth, your food that goes in your mouth. Trauma can bring up anything with the senses, so be aware. If you're gagging on eating food, there's a reason why. It's probably associated with that traumatic event. So be careful with yourself. If certain songs or music or tones or things outside are disrupting you, change that environment for you. Protect yourself, love yourself, and allow yourself to start to heal. Another thing is, as much as and as quickly as possible, remember to resume to your normal activities in your routine. Traumatic events can throw our lives into the state of chaos. And I've seen most people live their life in chaos after trauma and they don't get out of it. So the sooner you resume these normal activities, the more normal your life will feel. You'll feel better. Structure can provide a feeling of security as you etch your way back to your own stability. Okay, so be careful and gentle with yourself. Here's another one. You are in the recovery process. Give yourself the proper rest, nutrition, and exercise. If you were recovering from the flu, you wouldn't forget about all the health tips that you would to take care of yourself. So in this case, you need to do it too. You've got to do the same thing for yourself as you would if you were sick, same as if you're healing from trauma stress. And another one for this current situation of somebody newly in trauma, and maybe you know somebody that needs this advice. Take an affirmative action on your behalf. For example, if you were a victim of a crime, prosecuting the perpetrator may be an empowering experience. If this is not an option for you, again, remember to write in your journal, talk to someone. Um, you can even talk to that person in your own space, your own house, your own bathroom, whatever it is. You can look in the mirror standing up and you can actually speak to them. Get away from me. Stop. The things that disempowered you before become empowered. Stand in front of the mirror and and just literally put your hand up. No, you're not allowed to come further. These are things that or shut the hell up, whatever you want to do. These are things that will keep you growing stronger and out of the trauma space. And remember, whatever and however it feels to take action, do so. When I was raped, I think it was 7 years ago, I did not report it. I did not report it. I was, the person disappeared. I didn't report it. And I know that at the time I was struggling about that because I was told, what about, well, I did report it, but not enough. And I'll explain that. So I got from different people, especially men, friends, well, why don't you, you've got to report it because they could be doing this to another woman. Well, then I felt guilty about other women. So once I was a little bit stronger and I tried to report it, they couldn't find him. That's why I said he disappeared. So I had met the person online on a dating site. We had talked several times. And then on our first date, it happened. So, and then he disappeared. So obviously he was probably using different names or whatever. So my point is take care of yourself and be gentle. If somebody's saying, "Oh, you've got to go to the police, you've got to do this," and it doesn't feel right for you, make sure first you're safe, you're well maintained, your mental ability, your physical abilities are all moving forward, so that you're moving out of the victim and more into the empowered place. Okay, so also be aware of, and this is always, not just until you heal this and there's no more triggers, remember to be aware of your emotional triggers and learn how to cope with them in the best way for you. So that would be like, creatively, that that there are certain ways in which you cannot be in an experience. Here's an example. I was interviewing another self-love teacher on a show. And at the time, I had no idea that her trauma was so severe from childhood. From talking to her, I thought that everything was great. In our interview, something that I said and did triggered her on air. And it was I'm sure for her, the most upsetting situation that an individual could experience. And it was just, we were talking about healing trauma, and I had made a noise talking about, and if you're feeling this noise, do such and such, and it set her off. So be aware what your triggers are. Think about who you are and the state that you want to be in, because you as in general people like me, we need to heal this stuff so we're not triggered, so we're not functioning in society and then bam, there we go into that space. So it turns out that woman that I was interviewing is one of the only people, because she became one of my students afterwards, is one of the only people that literally could not get past fully her trauma. So, and that's her experience. Remember, we all have our own journeys here. Nobody's judging the other. This is about coming together now as a community to share information about how to heal what's inside. This whole Me Too thing in the social media, I didn't partake in. I just said me too. That's it. Because I didn't want to put my story out there for the world publicly. Not that it's publicly or privately, but there were so many other people. I've worked through my trauma, so I didn't need to. There were people who were saying, wow, this is the first time I'm addressing this. So I stayed back and watched and realized that there are so many different areas that affect people, and I experienced this too, and I thought it was due to my younger childhood sexual molestation and then rape when I was 14. And, of course, then you heard about the one 7 years ago. I thought that catcalls and whistles, they disturbed me because it just made me uncomfortable for my trauma. But apparently it makes women feel devalued. Let's understand, though, women to women, that sexual abuse, mine was not incest, thank God. It was with my Girl Scout leader's husband for 6 years. So understand that every sister, every woman that you're with, generally has something to heal from their childhood. And be supportive of those who have either greater trauma or lesser trauma. Again, as I stated, all of our trauma is the same. It integrates into our bodies. Now, somebody like my experience or this other person's that I was saying that was so severe, yes, those were like almost like institutionalized type of situations that needed to happen. Not everybody's at that level, but getting the help you need to move past it is where we want to move into. So be gentle with yourself. There I go again, because that is an incredibly important place to step into, is being gentle with yourself, because recovery does not come, healing does not come when you're not gentle. And we're not alone. Each and every single person has experienced similar things. So no one is alone. That was one of my first things, was I felt I was alone, because the majority of the population back in the 70s, when I started talking about my sexual abuse after it was happening, just thought I was like whacked out. Well, I needed help. Why didn't this little girl get the help she needed? And then as an adult, why didn't my friends, husband, family, whatever, be able to support me more? I'm saying I need help. I don't trust this. I still feel like I'm going to be raped every time I go out of the house. So what I did was I ate so much that I distorted my body so that men would leave me alone. How unloving is that? But that's what I had to do to feel safe, because I didn't have anyone. So whatever your situation is, you always have help on healing your trauma. You don't have to cut yourself, kill yourself, gain so much weight that nobody will look at you, hide in your house, become a recluse. You don't have to do those things. There is help out there. And thank God for our growth in the internet and stuff, that we can do research and find things. Ask questions. You're not alone. So try to find some deeper meaning in what's happened to you. Now, I'm not saying I created this, the whole spiritual community over the years has been, and I created this situation. How can I change it? This is my fault. This is my fault. This is my fault. I created it. Okay, it's not your fault. And you didn't simply create it, especially when you were a young child. It could be part of your historical storyline that you're here in this lifetime as an infinite spiritual being to move through. It could be that. But you did not create this to be hurt. I just want that clear. I want it clear that the clothes you wear didn't cause it. The things you say didn't cause it. Walking across the street didn't cause it. It wasn't caused by those things. It was caused by somebody's mental illness or inability to control themselves or handle themselves. This has nothing to do with the love that you are as a being, as a person, and who you are. Okay, so understand this was not your fault. Okay, so we already talked about seeking help, so I'm just going to say it again. Seek help. Seek it through a spiritual advisor or a teacher, therapy. Be patient with yourself. It does take time to heal. Your recovery, it depends upon you. And remember, it goes up and down, up and down, up and down. We take a step forward, we go back a teeny bit. We take a step forward, we go back a teeny bit. The reason we go back a teeny bit goes back to the subconscious. The subconscious is dragging us back because it doesn't understand the change we're trying to make. Our subconscious is this organic computer, and we're pretty fantastic when you think about that. This organic computer, our brain is this organic computer, and so it's literally trying to make sense of everything so we can move forward. So when we change our patterns, when we reset our mindset and rechange those patterning, what is happening is our subconscious is struggling bit by bit to make sense of it. So once it catches up, then we can move forward even more. So those are those step backs. Don't allow those step backs to throw you into a deep hole forever. There are situations in our life that we can be down for 6 months, 6 years, or our entire lifetime. What do you choose to do? I say get up and get out now. In my book, Mirror, Mirror, a Step-by-Step Guide to a Life That Loves You Back, the deep pockets process gets you out of that place, that stumbling place you go back into. So check out the book. That's one of the tools that I'm going to suggest. But check out the book in that area because it really will help you move forward. It's just a process that teaches you how to shift your conscious awareness and get back out. So you're not a victim, and this, yes, it happened to you, but you can leap out of the victim mode. Now, I want to suggest some action steps to take. One, as I mentioned before, go into and download the book, Mirror, Mirror, Step-by-Step Guide to a Life That Loves You Back. There's several processes in there. The mirror work process is in there. It's also worked in there for the blind and the deaf. On my website, there is a free download of the mirror work in the inner child meditation process. That is also something that will create major change. I spoke with the inner child, working with the inner child. The way that I have found the inner child process to work the best is the way that I teach it. Most of my work has been downloaded through prayer and meditation and asking literally for help. I've been an active person with a conversation with God since I was 4 due to abuse with my mom and being locked in closets and being able to say, hey, God, Father, Mother, I need your help right now, and understand that who I was. I'm grateful for the spiritual work that I had as a child from my grandmother that allowed me to be able to do and be this person. So there's also the mirror work, which is really important, that connects us to our love and opens up that space. And I do that differently than many. We don't say our name. We just literally say, I love you, and write down our reaction and what goes on. Write down your reaction and what goes on in your inner child meditation. Write down in your journal what's going on with this healing process. There is so much for you guys, me, everybody, to continue to grow into and out of fear, out of the belief system that we're not good enough, into self-love. Now, with that being said, I'd like to allow the people on the phone lines to be able to ask a question and have it answered. So if you start to speak, or actually I'll just go through and ask if you have questions, and I'm just going to use their phone lines. This is an audio of an actual video recording, but I'm keeping people's anonymity quiet. So I'm just going to give their area codes, and my assistant coach here, Monique, is here. So I will be calling on her, and she's the only other actual name that you'll hear. So we're going to hear from Monique first, and then she's going to be popping in and out of anything that she wants to add to help people with their questions along with me. Hey, Monique.
Hi.
Hi. So anything you want to add before we start to help everybody on the lines?
I just want to say that it's so great that you're having this class today, because even with what's going on out in social media and everything being said and spoken and brought up, to actually hear what you can do, to be guided what you could do or what steps you could take to actually heal from it, is very important. And it's great that it's coming out and it's coming to the surface and being revealed. That's awesome. But it's also very important that once you admit it, or once you remember it or realize it, what steps are you going to take so that you can heal it from within on a deeper level, so that won't affect your life or your relationships in a way that could be damaging to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just very grateful that you're going through it in detail and giving us all the different steps and giving everybody an opportunity to ask and talk about it, as far as the steps in the healing process go.
Awesome. Thank you. And let's hear from, we're hearing from who just clicked on area code 708.
Hello, Mia.
Hello. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi. So what question or information do you have?
I don't necessarily think I have a question, but it definitely was, as always, awesome to listen to you talk. And, you hit on that whole early on when you were talking about just having the psychotherapy meet the spirituality aspect. And that's something, I went to talk therapy for years and years and years. And, you just sit there and you're on that hamster wheel going around and around and, working with you and just everything else I do, realizing that energy concept. And you really, for me, have needed that spiritual aspect to get through some of my past. But it wasn't going to happen without that spiritual knowledge and accepting of the whole energy and moving through. And so just kind of listening to you talk just kind of reminded me of I'm in a better place now and somewhere I don't think I could have gotten without putting the two together. And I was kind of doing some music therapy this morning and I listened to that that song from Frozen, Let It Go.
Mm-hmm.
And that I just kind of think about, how long I've held on to, I held on, and it was holding on to things that didn't serve me. And, so we can't stop bad things from happening to us and others, but there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
So
thank you. And as we grow, our conscious awareness, our intellectual, our emotional, our emotional intelligence, there's the word, it grows so much that we become different people and we don't seem to bring in as much chaos, trauma, and all that. So that's a really amazing aspect of this work too, is you're re-raising that intellectual level within yourself, so you're operating different and bringing in different experiences. I'm sure you've experienced it too, that as you've grown in your work, that, I'm talking about the self-work, the self-growth work within, that your life is, you can see the difference between smoothness and non-smoothness and chaos and non-chaos.
Yeah, yes, for sure. Yeah, things happening that make my head spin that I'm like, what? This is like, you have to pinch yourself like it can't be happening. Or so yes, there's definitely a different energy. And the thing, like I said, you can't stop negative things from happening, but it's how do I look at them? How do I look at them now? And
right.
How do I handle them versus the anger, all that, and accepting hurt people, and all those things out there, but kind of putting it in perspective.
Right, and removing the hurt people, because we don't have to have them in. We can love them, but they don't have to be in our life, because we've come from that space, and part of moving on is to continue to move on without going backwards. That deep pocket or that falling in a hole type feeling is when we allow the chaos from other people's lives to affect our own. When I was talking about that no one can love us like we can love us, that we are literally connected to ourselves so deeply, we are a culture, or we are a being of touch, feel, and we need that in order to survive. Mammals need that, but particularly, I don't want to call us a primate, but you know what I'm saying. They've done studies with not just humans, but originally they did it with primates, and so we saw that that gorillas, monkeys, they all need to have that touch, that love, that connection when they're little, or else they go absolutely bonkers. Humans do that. We are a touchy-feely community. So to continue to be strong and touchy-feely, perhaps there might be one or two people that you need to leave your experience. They're going to be taken care of by somebody else. It's not about allowing people to bring us down. It's about continuing to elevate yourself and everyone else around you. So be aware, everyone, just what 708 just had mentioned, that it's literally about that awareness and moving forward and not allowing the chaos in. Okay. Thank you so much. That was great. I'm going to go to 626. Hey, do you have any questions or statements?
Actually, no. Actually, this is my first time listening in, and Mia, I think this is wonderful that you're doing this. And I've been taking notes, and but no, I really appreciate this, and thank you for inviting me in. So this is good.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you, honey. Okay. So now we're going to go to 403, which is in another country, by the way, in Canada. Hello, 403.
Hey, Mia. Thank you so much for doing this. You're just awesome.
Well, so are you. Thank you. So do you have any questions or statements that you'd like addressed or shared?
I kind of do have. I have a question in that I've been through what I've been through. None of it probably is as severe as yours.
Remember, I'm just the same as you. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't mean it that way. I find that in my relationship now with my husband, he, like, we're all touchy-feely, right? Mm-hmm. But he tends to touch me always in a sexual way.
Mm-hmm. He's a man.
Which makes me extremely uncomfortable. You know, we've only been married like almost 40 years, but it still makes me feel really uncomfortable.
Does it?
It's just.
Is it related to your? Did you have childhood sexual trauma?
I think a lot of it does. So therefore, to me, this is all men want.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Am I making sense?
You are. Let me say a few things here, honey. I value what you said. That's wonderful that you recognize it. He loves you. He's been with you for 40 years. You guys are not children anymore. So the fact that he is touching you in a sexual manner, oh my heavens, as long as it's not throwing you on the bed and tying you up and you can't say yes or no, Lordy, you are one lucky woman. Now I'm envious. I think
what gets
beautiful.
me is that it's a constant thing. Like it's not
like a daily thing, or is it like every time he sees you?
Practically every time he sees me. Now
you are one hot mama.
That's what he tells me.
Oh my goodness, you're so lucky. Wow. So let's address this. I mean, this is fabulous because the older we get, the less that happens to women. Men change, their libido changes and all that. Now, when we meet somebody and marry them, we obviously have different love languages, we have different love techniques, and usually when you marry young, you integrate into a system together that works both for you. And so at this point, it's been an override for you, at least, the entire time. So look at it, address the issues to heal that are bringing you to this place, because really the women who are listening to this are saying, okay, 403, you are one lucky woman and we just want to kick you out of the way and take that man first out. So I'm valuing what you're saying and I'm not belittling it, but I'm also saying perhaps find the healing within yourself in that space. Why is it triggering you? Because if you tell him to stop, have you told him to stop?
Well, I've told him that I don't like it that much, like that often.
Aww.
Please back off a bit. Come up and give me a hug instead of grabbing my boob.
Oh, I see. Oh, that way.
You know what I mean? Like, it's.
He's like a little boy still.
Yeah, like he's about 14.
Yeah. Well, why don't you grab his crotch roughly and say, "Hey, baby, I'm back at you." See how he likes that.
Problem is, he would probably like it.
Okay, so So yes, all right. So I see that there needs to be more of a communication level between you, because it's not just coming up and flirting and, oh baby, you're just so hot, I want
No,
you.
no. Like, but that would be fine.
Uh-huh.
But it's the constant, come up and just grab my boob, or things that to do it so often makes me uncomfortable.
Right. Okay.
And I tried to explain that to him, and then of course he goes into his insecure mode where, most women would just love this, and they'd kill to have me for a husband, and they would love this, and well, then go find someone else then. And I don't mean it in that way, but it's just something that makes me extremely uncomfortable. And when I try to talk to him about it, it just gets all flipped on me.
Right. Okay. You and I can have a session on this for healing. It's really something, it's a communication thing between the two of you, because he's not understanding what you're saying, and he's also not valuing that aspect bothers you. And in that sense, that if it's a physical, like I had said before, if it's something that's disturbing physically, sexually, continually, then that is a problem, And although he's not throwing you on the bed and taking you forcefully, it is, to a sense, he's grabbing your body parts that are your private, that those belong to you, right? So I can see where there's an issue. So for anybody who's listening, for everyone who's listening, what I recommend is always, and 403 and I will get together on this and have a healing session, but I always recommend communication, meditation, inward, because when we go inward on I almost said medication. When we go inward on meditation, we're seeking our higher self, which the divine God flows through us in that aspect too. And we're looking for answers. Ask the answers of how can this be smooth? I didn't even want to get into, because we're almost out of time, I didn't want to get into, hey, do you want to stay in the marriage? Those are things for a private, session that you and I will have. But for anybody listening, stand up for your body. Ask questions in meditation. How do I handle this? If it's in a relationship already like this of years and years and years, the pattern is set, he's in cement and he's not moving. So one partner can elevate where the other partner is not, and it is what it is. And sometimes we are not, sometimes we may not want to stay in a situation like that, and sometimes we just want to truly try to heal it. So that is for 403 to decide on her own. I'm not going to influence her in any way except for to continue to love herself, as I would for each of you. Continue to stand in your power. If somebody is making you or feel that you cannot stand in your power and you're not powerful, then it is time to look at the situation, what to do, because being in that empowered state is the most important thing for all of humanity, for all of us. We have to be empowered, or we crumple up and we literally die inside. It's not about allowing somebody to control us and to move over us like a lawnmower. We have to have the symbiotic space in our home, in our relationships. We are here to live the most magnificent life we can live. And if we're not allowing ourselves to experience greatness, then we need to change that. So 403, remember everyone, if you don't remember, I'm using their area codes so that I'm keeping their privacy on the video chat here, and you only will get the audio chat. So send me an email after this and let's set up a session, okay?
Okay.
You're one of my students, you get a session. So let's do that. And since we're here at the end, I'd like to ask Monique one more time if there was anything else that she would like to address at the end for people before we say goodbye.
Yes, actually, I would. Thank you. I
Mm-hmm.
thought it was so important when you talked about how when you take all these steps, especially when you do the meditation, which I think is so amazing, your inner child meditation,
Mm-hmm.
because you said something so amazing. You said that you know, you don't have to change the story itself because that's what happened, but you can change the energy of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And you said that you can actually change your DNA, you know, of all this stuff that happens, of, you know, all this energy that we're carrying inside of us.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, so for any women that feel like, you know, things, the you know, those things keep coming up and keep repeating, if you start the healing process and you do the meditations, that's all going to start to come up and you can release it and you can change your DNA. You can change your energy of all this trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, once you change your energy, your outside circumstances will change and you're going to see things from a different perspective. So I just wanted to say that it's so important to use the tools that Mia is offering to everybody because they do work and you will change your energy for sure.
I'm smiling really big because this is not a paid endorsement. Yay! Thank you. That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you. That's wonderful. And yes, it literally is about changing the energy of your story. And the reason I call it and why I speak on this topic, love changes the energy of our story, is because, again, in that inner child meditation process, we go in at age 3 and 4, and we love that little being that we are. Well, we love him or her to wellness. We love him or her to confidence. We love him or her to self-love. We're teaching in that space. So we're actually reteaching our younger self consciousness how to uh, integrate positive behavior, love into who we are. And in doing so, that emotional intelligence level rises. We change. We're empowered. We then seek out to support people. People say, I've got a huge mission in life. I don't know what it is, but I got to get there. The only way to get your mission accomplished, literally, is to heal these things that have come upon us. This is part of the human experience. It's part of being a spiritual and human person together. So allow yourself the ease to work through this. Thank you guys for joining us for this Me Too trauma healing, and have a beautiful day.